All right. Welcome to the show. This is the Frankly Fantasy Football Podcast. We are your hosts, Frankie and Johnny. Welcome to the playoffs, Frankie, my friend.
Welcome, John. Let's go, baby. We're here. We're ready. Man, I'm so pumped up for this episode, dude. I am so ready for this week.
You know, we didn't plan this. I'm back home in my home office. I was in Chicago this week. I sit down. This is what I traveled home in. You know, I got the Lululemon, tight workout shirt and the hat. I sit down and look at you in the green room before we start recording, and we're wearing the same damn. We both look like we're either going to rob something. We're going to rob a bank.
Yeah.
Or we're like NPCs. We have no logos or anything on our hats. We're like NPCs in a video game, like Grand Theft Auto or some shit.
Goddamn right. We're the NPCs of Frankly Fantasy Football, man. Fantasy football in general.
Hey, you know what, man? I'll be your NPC any day of the week.
Any day of the week.
That's right. Welcome to the show, everybody. Wow, we got the playoffs, guys. Playoffs are here. I'm freaking out. I'm excited. I got the chills thinking about it. Do or die this weekend. Oh, yeah. We got your back, guys. There's some start-sit questions. There's a lot of news, a lot of guys banged up. We got your back. We're going to get you through these playoffs, and we want to see you win some Frankly Fantasy Championships, right? What's that look like, Frankie? Like that gold trophy in the background there?
Yeah. Look at this. Anybody who wants a little piece? Look at that. Yeah. Look at those beautiful nameplates on here, John.
Look at that. How many years back has that gone?
This one's gone back since 08.
08. Okay.
08.
All right, nice. I got a couple of my names on there. I know you do too.
Sure do, baby.
All right, welcome to the show, everybody. Hopefully we can get you one of those damn trophies. Welcome to the show. Please follow us on social media, guys. Instagram is a great follow. Frankie puts out some great information, updated news for everybody, rankings, who did great, who did not. Also, a lot of funny shit on there, too, so it's really good. Also on Twitter and X at Frankly Fantasy F. YouTube, where you're watching this right now. We appreciate it. Thank you for subscribing. It's Frankly Fantasy Football. Please share that, guys. Give us a review. Give us a comment. Those things help the channel so much. We've had great momentum this year. Can't wait to see what we're going to do next year. It's going to be great, guys. Also, please, I know you watch us here on YouTube. Please listen as well, or at least just subscribe. So in case you can't watch the video, you can listen to it. We're trying to grow the audio as well. Anywhere podcasts are found, Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts, everywhere. Look us up, Frankly Fantasy Football. All right, today, Frankie, we've got our hit it's and quit it's, our starts and sits. This is the episode everyone waits for and wants to see, and we're going to get to that. But first, we're going to get to some news.
The season's out of your listeners don't expect.
News and notes.
Okay, I'd like to shout out my opponent this week in our family league that we do. It's a very intense league. We've been doing it for a while with all these guys. 14 team, double flex, 8 teams make it to the playoffs. It's brutal, man. It's trench warfare for sure. Gets a little heated coming up with the holiday parties this weekend. We all just talk shit. The whole family gets annoyed because all we do is talk fantasy football. And we're like, you guys were complaining that we weren't close enough before. Now you're complaining because all we do is talk to each other, which, all right, talking, that's generous. We're actually shouting at each other while we drink. And I mean, it's not in a bad way. Just we talk loud. We get very passionate.
And John, to that point, we're also betting on we got to talk about this for a second.
Okay,
guys,
do
in
it.
the 14-man league, okay, we have 8 teams that have made it to the playoffs. Congratulations to those 8 teams. Johnny and I are part of those 8 teams. Rock on. For the other 6, what we have decided to do, spice it up a little bit. The winners are placing bets on who is going to win the losers bracket. And so everybody's throwing in $20. We're picking out of a hat, and you got a random team to be rooting on. So if you guys are looking for some fun, creative, different things to spice it up through the playoffs to keep your players in your other league engaged, check it out. That's going to be pretty cool.
It is. It's always fun to have people still engaged, even though they can't win, the Super Bowl. Do something with your losers bracket so you can make it interesting. It keeps everybody engaged and going and playing the waiver wire and all that too. So it's good stuff, man. But I want to shout out Dennis. I'm playing him, Dennis McGlone, playing him first round of the playoffs, my cousin. And
news.
the news today, Dennis, it's dedicated to you, my friend. All right, first of all, Jonathan Taylor, he's out this week with a thumb, not going to play, going to be without him. Zach Moss, how are we feeling about Zach Moss, Frankie? Is he going to be somebody we're talking about later, you think?
John, I don't know if we're going to be necessarily speaking about Zach Moss later, but I do think this is a guy that you're going to continue if you have him, if you have Jonathan Taylor and you know what Zach Moss has done previously. I think you're going to start him up, especially in a double flex league, John.
Okay, sounds good. Isaiah Pacheco, running back for the Chiefs, did not practice again on Thursday. It doesn't look good, guys. They were hoping to get him out there, but the Chiefs are a team that specifically schemes to personnel. I think it's going to be a Jerick McKinnon game. I think Clyde's going to do the work between the tackles, and I think you're going to see a lot of McKinnon out of the backfield. I would make plans to be without Isaiah Pacheco this week. Another guy, Devon Achane. Dennis, I know you're cringing right now. Devon Achane also did not practice in the walkthrough, actually, on Thursday with a toe injury. Doesn't sound good for Achane. They were real, it's Mike McDaniel. I mean, you're not going to get any straight answers out of this guy, but it doesn't look good for Achane, which all that means to me is that Mostert, who has 16 touchdowns on the year so far, fire him up. He's going to be a great play. In that same game, I know that everyone saw Tyreek get banged up. Tyreek says he's going to play. He's not on the injury report at all. Mike McDaniel's quote was that they're going to put him in a position where he will not re-injure it. What does that mean, man? I have no idea what that means with an ankle. What are you going to do? Give him some roller skates?
The little walker, you're going out there. No, definitely not happening.
No, it's not happening. Tyreek will play. He'll be all right. Justin Jefferson also says he's going to play this week. You firing up JJ if he's playing this week?
Firing him up, 100%. No question about it.
All right, let's talk about it, though, because they did name Nick Mullins to be their quarterback. We talked about it briefly, but I just want to make sure we're still on the same page there. We're still there. Nick Mullins at quarterback. You're starting Justin Jefferson, but you're really trying to not start Jordan Addison. Is that correct, Frankie?
John, that's correct. I mean, at this point in time, guys, you got to fire up Justin Jefferson. We've seen historical evidence that Nick Mullins has done a good job in getting, especially the receiver, won the ball and getting the tight end very involved. So TJ Hawkinson is right. There's no downgrade here. If anything, John, it actually might be a slight upgrade from what we've seen. So love TJ Hawkinson. Since we were talking about on our last episode, Jordan Addison, bit on the fence. We were kind of saying, probably want to stray away. With these injury updates, John, I'm kind of changing my tune a tad. And I'm not saying this is a smash play. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's still a very much so a risk. But the reason why I'm changing my tune is because with JJ banged up, he's going to play. But with JJ banged up and what we've seen from Nick Mullins, right, previously, and now, which we're going to hit on it as well, let's just lump in Alexander Mattison, who also hasn't played and plans to be playing without him. John, I don't know if they're going to be able to solely rely on Ty Chandler. Again, we talked about him in the previous episode. Yeah, he's a guy that I would actually be starting, but I'm not sure about how good of a start that actually would be, if I'm being candid with you. So for me, man, bringing it full circle to Jordan Addison, I'm on the fence here. I'm not so much you got to fully sit him, because if you had Devon Achane, if you did have Isaiah Pacheco or even JT, and they were in your flex position, and now you might be looking at...
Maybe you lost Keenan Allen.
Keenan Allen,
for
beautiful
I had
call.
that happen. I had to pick up DeMarcus Robinson off the waiver wire to fill in for Keenan Allen.
Brilliant call. If you have a Keenan Allen, now Addison looks appetizing, or he looks better, because, John, I'm talking with you about some of the issues I'm running into, right? Josh Downs. Do I start... obviously we're recording this on a Thursday, right? So we're talking about some Thursday night here, but like a Josh Palmer, right? At that point in time. But again, it's looking at like Josh Downs. Do I start Jerick McKinnon? Do I start some of these other cats? I'm starting probably Addison over both of those guys at this point in time. So now it's really about the situation at hand. So I'm not discounting him, but what I'm saying is it's a risk, but there is slight upside. So take that with a grain of salt. Depends on your strategy, depends on your team. I'm not out on Addison this week.
Okay, it's good advice, man. CJ Stroud still in concussion protocol. Doesn't seem likely he's going to be getting out of that, but keep an eye on Friday or Saturday. It might change. Najee Harris kind of came up with a knee injury here. Didn't practice on Thursday. Definitely monitor that. All right. Now, I didn't feel good about starting either Najee or Jalen Warren, but if Najee doesn't go, is Jalen Warren an auto start?
Definitely. Don't even think twice about it, John. I really believe that. I wouldn't think twice about it. If Najee can't go, it's Jalen Warren's backfield, and we're going to get a super heavy dose of Jalen Warren this week, if that's the case.
They play Indianapolis. Indianapolis, believe it or not, is the 32nd best, which means they're the worst at run defense. So
Yeah.
I'm staying away from them in my playoffs if they're both on the field.
Yep.
If it's just Jalen Warren, you've got to start him up. Yes, absolutely. It's just a volume thing I'm a little concerned about and probably a low-scoring game. But if he's by himself, yeah, lights up. Let's go. Okay, DJ Moore, got to keep an eye on him. He did not practice on Thursday with an ankle. Definitely concerning. You have to play him. You do have to temper expectations with Denzel Ward potentially coming back, that Browns defense. But if somebody's going to get some on the Bears, it's going to be DJ Moore. But keep an eye on his status for sure. Chris Olave also did not practice with an ankle. No other information. You're just going to have to watch some of these guys. Chris Godwin did not practice with a knee injury. His actually doesn't look very good. We might be without Chris Godwin this week, which means Mike Evans, redemption game for him coming back here. Marquis Brown, wide receiver for the Cardinals, did not practice with a heel either. This is a guy, I tried picking him up off of waivers just to kind of be cute for a fill-in. It's not a guy you can play this week. He's not practicing.
No.
He's got a heel injury. They're playing the 49ers. You're sitting Marquise Brown no matter what this week. Brian Robinson, running back for the Washington Manders. This one's a little unusual. He had a hamstring injury and kept him out the week before. They had a bye week last week, so he's had a week and a half to heal up. He hasn't practiced this week. Doesn't look good. If Antonio Gibson, if it passed through waivers somehow and is still out there in your leagues, pick him up. He could be a good play this week. But monitor Brian Robinson, doesn't look good for him. Kareem Hunt, also running back for the Browns, did not practice with a groin injury. Keep an eye on him. They definitely are going to need him against the Bears. All right, Frankie, that is the news for the day. Let's see who you want to hit and who you want to quit, baby.
I want you to hit it.
Yeah, I love me some Funkadelic, baby. You got to have Funkadelic in the morning. All right, Frankie, let's look at your top starts here. Week 15 in the playoffs. Listen, you can't be cute here, Frankie. This is people's playoffs. Lives are on the line. Their fantasy football the glory is on the line here, Frankie. We're trusting you. What do you got for us in your tier 1, 12 to 16 team deeper leagues? Who can we start this week, buddy?
Yeah, man. Tier 1, 12, 16 man league. The first guy that I am firing up is Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers at Jacksonville. Okay. Number 1, it's a primetime game. Huge. Everything is on the line. Jacksonville's playoff hopes, right? And again, they're still cemented as number 1 in their division. However, they definitely don't want to drop 3 in a row here. And Baltimore for the number 1 seed in the AFC, now that both Miami and Kansas City both lost. So they're in the driver's seat right now to get that bye. So John, what I'm talking about here, Zay Flowers, right now he's averaging 10.07 points in half PPR through the year. Over his last 2 weeks, right? He played at the Chargers. He ended up having, he ended up having 20 points in fantasy football, okay, in half PPR. But with that being said, he had 8 targets for 5 receptions. He ended up having 25 yards receiving and a touchdown. But what was fascinating, John, they got him involved in the rushing game. He ran the ball for 37 yards and another touchdown. Then you flash forward, they had a bye week. Usually teams, again, we called it out the last episode, they're re-scheming. They're figuring out who they are. They're teasing a couple things, right? Trying to throw the opponents off. They come back after bye. They play the Rams in what was an absolute incredible game. Ends up getting 10 targets, 6 receptions, 60 yards, and a touchdown. And then, John, what I'm getting at is he ended up having 17 points there. So the last 2 weeks, he was receiver 4 and receiver 7. And so, John, when we're thinking about the evolution of what the Baltimore Ravens have done over the last few weeks in this Todd Monken offense, first and foremost, we have seen a massive downgrade in Gus Edwards and Keaton Mitchell and that of Justice Hill, right? They're not being as effective on the ground as what they once were early on in the season. And what they're doing is now they're putting the ball in Lamar's hands to make the judgment calls, right? So it's Lamar rushing, but it's also more Lamar passing. So for me, man, coming off of a game to where he had 10 targets, coming off of a game to where he had 17 fantasy points, and then you're playing against a team, right, that is Baltimore is going to at Jacksonville. So they're playing in a must-win game. Jacksonville's going to come out hot. This is going to be fascinating because I see them needing to throw the ball around. What Jacksonville does really well is they bring Josh Allen off the edge there, right? They have really good front seven. And so that's going to potentially take away, again, some of that run game. I'm looking to Lamar to distribute this ball. I'm locking in Zay Flowers this week, man.
I love it. I can't even add to it, man, because everything you said was absolutely perfect. Zay Flowers is heavily involved. He's like a tiny little Keenan Allen out there.
Yeah.
He's running around the middle of the field, getting some jet sweeps and reverses now. It's pretty cool what they're doing with him, man. Yeah, I've got the Lamar Zay Flowers stack in a super flex league, and I am very excited for that this week. They did exactly right last week. It's the end of the season, Lamar.
Yeah.
It's okay. What we did was cute. We've got all these running backs. We ran them. Lamar had more rushing attempts than any of the three running backs in the backfield. He had more. So you're right. They're putting the ball in Lamar's hands because it matters now. Mm-hmm. It means something. They're fighting for that number one seed. They can still get that in the AFC. So yeah, I love it, man. Fire them up.
John, number 2, I'm going to stay in the same game here. I'm going opposite side of the field. I'm going to go Evan Ingram. What we have seen, this dude has absolutely blown up the tight end world for now 2 years in a row. The back half of last year, we saw him explode. This year, John, throughout the entirety of the season, I'll have to double check on this, but I'm usually pretty accurate when I'm throwing out stats. I believe he set the franchise record for the Jags for most receptions for a tight end. And so that just goes to show what he's been able to do. John, he's averaging 9.85 points in half PPR as a tight end. Brilliant. What does that equate to? Number 5 overall tight end. In addition, he ended up having in the last 3 weeks alone, he had 7.4 points against that of Houston. Out of a tight end, I'm taking that. And then against Cincinnati, 18.7. And then against Cleveland, who has been very good against tight ends, especially with JOK. You had Anthony Walker, right? Sione Takitaki, and many of these other guys, especially with some of their safeties that were coming down. He wrecked them, John, single-handedly. Looking at what he has done against that of Cleveland and Cincinnati. Cleveland, he had 10 targets, 11 receptions, 95 yards, and 2 touchdowns. The week before, as I mentioned, against Cincinnati, 9 targets, 9 receptions, 82 yards, and 1 touchdown. Going all the way back to their bye week in week 9, John. So looking at now week 10, 7 targets. Week 11, 6 targets. Week 12 against Houston, 8 targets, and then the 9 and 12. The reason why I'm even more high on Evan Ingram that you can fire up, not just in your tight end spot, guys, but I truly believe in your actual flex spot, is because Christian Kirk is out. So with that being said, now we've started to see more distribution to that of Evan Ingram rather than of Zay Jones and even Calvin Ridley. And so for me, man, Evan Ingram is the number 1 passing option in this offense as it stands right now. So I'm locking him in, and I'm loving what I'm seeing from this Jags offense with Evan Ingram.
I want to confirm what you were questioning yourself on there, Frankie. Evan Ingram's 78 receptions so far this season set a new single-season franchise record among tight ends.
Beautiful.
Breaking the previous record he set last season of 73 receptions. So
beautiful.
You're absolutely right, yeah. Additionally, Evan Ingram's 661 yards through week 14 this season is among the most among tight ends in franchise history. It's the most that he's ever in franchise history. So yeah, really impressive stuff, man. Yeah, he did it last year. He's doing it again this year. I mean, we're going to have to start calling him the Yeti like Derrick Henry. He just gets stronger in the cold, it seems like, man. Yeah. All right, who else you got, buddy?
Man, I'm going to roll with our Brownies. I'm going to get one of them boys in there. Go Dogs. We got Jerome Ford versus that of the Chicago Bears. John, this one is definitely not usually a lock from what we've seen, right? Because they're sharing some of the field with Kareem Hunt. We've seen Pierre Strong get involved, all sorts of different things. Kareem Hunt is hurt, guys. Okay? He hasn't been practicing. On top of it, Flacco, he's been throwing the ball very, very well. So what this means is that this is opening up the opportunity for Jerome Ford to produce once more. Johnny's the number 20 back, okay, in half PPR. He's still an RB2, a very solid RB2, averaging 11.23 points a game. Okay, over the last few weeks here, if we go back even to that Pittsburgh game, about 11 points. Week 12, 10 points. Week 13, 12 points. Week 14 against the Jags, when he was splitting time, 10.7 points. Guys, what we're seeing is his floor is very, very high. And so that is why I am starting Jerome Ford, because with these injuries happening, you might need a very high floor cat. You might not need a ceiling play because you already have that on your team. So if you have the ability to lock in Ford in your RB2 slot, you feel nice and cozy. It's a warm blanket, right? You're going to be going up against that of Pierre Strong, and that's pretty much it at this point in time. If Kareem Hunt does play, it's going to be very minimal. And again, the way Flacco has been widening the field with Elijah Moore and getting Cedric Tillman involved and getting Amari Cooper back and healthy, right? This aids very well for Jerome Ford. So for me, man, I'm really digging this play for a high floor, safe pick. Get nice and cozy on your team and know that he's more than likely going to bring in 9 to 13 points.
I love it, man. I'm with you 100%. I can't wait to play him myself. Who else you got, buddy?
John, for the last one here in the tier 1, right? So we're talking 12 to 16 man league. This one's a gimme, right? Because you're probably doing it anyways. But just in case, I'm firing up Brandon Ayuk. What we had seen, they're playing against that of Arizona, right? People might have Debo, people might have George Kittle, right? Things like that. If you're in a 12-man league, there's an opportunity. I mean, John, we're in a 14-man league together. I've seen your team, right? There are teams that have Keenan Allen. There are teams that have Cooper Kupp. There are teams that literally have A.J. Brown all on one team, right?
That's me,
and
baby.
so when you're factoring in another player like this that you might have, now we got to start like stack ranking a little bit more. So for me, man, I am absolutely aligned with that of Brandon Ayuk. He's the number 13 receiver in half PPR. He's averaging almost 14 points a game. And with the emergence of Debo, who has gone nuclear the last few weeks, right? He's staying consistent. John, we're looking at let's just take the last 4 weeks alone. Tampa Bay, 26 points, right? That was without Debo. Debo comes back, still has 12 points against that of Seattle. He had 13 points against that of Philly. He had 13.6 points then against playing Seattle again. So what I'm saying is, John, he's still being targeted by that of Brock Purdy to the tune of he had 6 targets in week 11, 4 targets in week 12, and then he had 7 and 9 even with Debo back. So, John, I'm liking Brandon Ayuk. He's definitely a dynamic player, and I think that this could be a really great opportunity playing against Arizona.
He has scored a touchdown in 4 of the last 5 games. You can pretty much chalk one up against Arizona, man.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Love it. Okay, let's get to Tier 2. Now, these are going to be the 8 to 10 team leagues where you've got just an armory of good players on your team there. All right, Frank, who are we starting out here, man? Who do you like?
John, I mean, this is for those listeners and those viewers that are constantly peppering us with those comments. Keep them coming, baby. But this one's for you. If you're sitting there and you're telling me, I got Stephon Diggs on my team, I got Keenan Allen on my team, I got DK Metcalf on my team, and I got, whoever the hell else on my team, and I need to pick 3 of them because I know it's coming, guys. I'm firing up DK Metcalf. I am playing DK Metcalf in an 8 to 10 man league this week, and I'm going to tell you why, John. He's the number 17 receiver on the year. On top of that, he's averaging 13 points in half PPR as it stands. And Philly's defense, from a passing perspective, from a defensive perspective against that of the receivers, right? So from a receiving end, has been atrocious. Not bad, god awful, sinful at this point, how bad they've been. And so, John, when you look at what DK's done, he's played some insane teams recently, right? Let's go back to week 10. again, with a cream puff matchup against that of Washington, right? Against that of Washington, he still ended up having 13.3 points. And with that, he ended up having 12 targets and 7 receptions for 98 yards. We go to Week 11 against that of the Los Angeles Rams. 9 targets, 5 receptions, right? 17 points. He played San Fran and had a very down game. Or did he? The points show that, but he still had 9 targets. 9 targets. Then we come in and we go to Dallas. Dynamic defense. That dude single-handedly with Geno Smith torched them. I mean, we're talking 8 targets, 6 receptions, 134 yards, and 3 tutties, and then which equates to 36 fantasy points. And then this past week, again, getting revenge on San Francisco after not having that great of a game. Johnny has 5 targets. He has 2 receptions, 52 yards, and a touchdown to redeem himself, which is 12 points. All of this to be said that he's gone through the gauntlet of the Rams at the Rams, San Francisco, at Dallas, and then at San Francisco, John. That is as difficult as it gets. And now you have Philly, who has been getting their shit pushed from the receiver perspective. John, I love this matchup, and I don't care if it's Drew Lock or Geno Smith throwing the ball, because that dude is going to be open. Lock in DK Metcalf.
I agree with you 100%. If you can do it against the Rams, the 49ers, and the Cowboys, you're going to be fine against Philly from what we've seen. Love it, man.
John, this one's hey man, I'm tipping the cap to you for this next one here. Again, 8 to 10 man league. We're going to go with Cooper Kupp. Now, a few weeks ago, we were nervous, right? Cooper Kupp didn't look right. Puka, right, honestly was also a little bit down at that point in time too. Matt Stafford wasn't really performing very well. Things have drastically changed since after that bye week. John, right after the bye week, right, he was still banged up. Only had 1 point against that of Seattle. Started to get healthier, wasn't really doing much against that of Arizona either. And so what was interesting is he still saw 5 targets. Again, did not look healthy. Now, the last 2 weeks against 2 dominant defenses, Cleveland and Baltimore. 8 targets against Cleveland, 6 receptions, 39 yards and a touchdown. 10 targets, 8 receptions, 115 yards, and 1 touchdown against Baltimore. 18 targets in 2 weeks against 2 of the top defenses overall in the NFL. Actually, I believe they're 1-3 at this point in time. So, John, when we're looking at Washington, is the 31st worst defense right now against the pass in the NFL. Really bad. I think that Cooper Kupp with Matt Stafford is going to cut them up super bad. So I'm going Cooper Kupp this week. Lock it in. I see a double-digit point.
I think I'm gonna make a prediction here. I think the Rams' skilled players are going to win people some championships this year, man.
I agree.
I think you're going to see a lot of championship teams with some Rams players on it, just based on the matchups, based on how hot they are right now and what they're playing for. So enjoy. We'll see if that comes true.
John, let's go with another Ram. While we're in here, 8 to 10 man league.
Let's go.
We want to win some money. You want to get to that semifinal. Your ass better be plugging in Kyren Williams here, right? So Kyren Williams against that of Washington. Guys, I don't know if there's a better play. I honestly, this week, truly in my soul, don't know if there's a better play. They don't have Montez Sweat. They don't have Chase Young. This team is a dumpster fire right now. And the only reason why Sam Howell is looking so decent is strictly because he's throwing the ball 1,000,000 times a game. And so when you look at Kyren Williams, John, and what he's done since he's come back from injury, it is unfreaking believable. I mean, we're talking against Arizona, John. In week 12, he had 38.4 points right away coming back. Okay. Against Cleveland, against that team that was dominant as all hell, he came in and said, yeah, fuck you, Cleveland. You know why? Because I'm rushing the ball 21 times for 88 yards and a touchdown on top of that. And they're getting him involved in the passing game. He had 5 targets, 3 receptions for another 24 yards. And then you look at, okay, well, Baltimore, he's certainly not repeating this, right? Wrong. 25 rush attempts, 114 yards, 4 targets, 3 receptions. John, what we are seeing from Kyren Williams from a utility perspective is nuts. In the last 3 weeks alone, since he's come back, 16 rushes, 21, and as I mentioned, 25. I love seeing Matt Stafford to Cooper Kupp getting that score up. And now we're just going to sit back and I'm going to run the tits off of that of Kyren Williams. That's what I think is going to happen this week.
Dennis, I know I shit on you in the beginning of the news there, talking about 3 of your running backs that are probably not playing this week, but you do have Kyren Williams. So I've got him as my number 1 running back on the week. I know he's going to torch me. I'm just hoping you have to start some shitbags around him. But congrats on the Kyren Williams start because, yeah, he's going to have a hell of a week, man.
Definitely. John, the last guy, 8 to 10 man league. I'm going to go with the number 4 running back on the season in half PPR. King Henry VIII has now moved up to the number 4 spot. Okay, I have been a proponent of King Henry. I traded for King Henry. I'm a believer. He's fucking Yeti, man, running over people. I'm all about it. And they're playing Houston. John, the reason why this is interesting is because if CJ Stroud, Nico Collins, and Tank Dell were playing, I would not be having the same conversation. If Davis Mills has to play without that receiving core and you're looking at Noah Brown and Robert Woods, I actually see the Titans running up that score a bit or at least getting a lead. And now you're feeding the Yeti. You're feeding King Henry. And what we've seen over the last few weeks, man, once they have gotten ahead, they have not let up. In the last 3 weeks alone, John, he's had week 12 at Carolina. He has ended up having 18 rushes for 76 yards and 2 touchdowns. Week 13 against that of Indianapolis Colts, 21 rushes, 102 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Okay? The last week at Miami, a terrible matchup. They should have got their shit pushed. They didn't. The Tennessee Titans defense kept them in the game, and Will Levis gave them an opportunity to score. And guess who they relied on when they got into the red zone? It wasn't Will Levis. It was Derrick fucking Henry. John, he had 17 rushing attempts. He only had, this is how ridiculous line this is, 17 rushing attempts, 34 yards. Terrible. 2 touchdowns. That is what he has done. He's had 6 touchdowns in the last 3 weeks alone, John. And with that being said, playing a Houston team without all of their people in a divisional match when Tennessee is not out of the playoffs yet, there is an opportunity here for this team. So for me, man, I'm riding with Derrick Henry. I'm starting him over some of the others that maybe have difficult matchups, and I'm rocking with the King.
You got to roll with the King, man. Do a little BB King on that shit. All right, let's look at some guys that we don't love this week. Who are some guys that we're sitting down here that you just don't trust to help you advance to the playoffs, the next round of the playoffs?
Yeah, guys, if you're looking to fire up Zach Charbonnet, he's got to be my number 1. And it's nothing against him. It's strictly because Kenneth Walker is now splitting time with Zach Charbonnet, or should I say vice versa? Zach Charbonnet is now splitting time with that of Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker is definitely their running back 1 at this point in time. Regardless, even if he wasn't, John, I still don't think I would fire him up this week. Because if Drew Lock is under center, or even Geno Smith is under center, going against this Philly rush defense is completely different than going against their pass defense. Now, yes, they have had some issues as of late. I don't foresee this happening anymore, right, from the rushing side. So Zach Charbonnet is not somebody I'm willing to risk. That is not a high ceiling play. If anything, if you're going to put him in there, it's just a plug and play. And at that point, throw in Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis has a much higher propensity to get you 0 points. He also has a much higher propensity to get you 20. So why not go with a higher risk, higher reward play than going with a Charbonnet who might get you 44 yards on 10 carries and right, that's pretty much the stat line. So for me, I'm sitting and I'm quitting on that of Zach Charbonnet this week.
Hey, I got news for you, Frankie. I'm not starting Kenneth Walker. I'm not starting Zach Charbonnet.
Right.
And I'm sure as shit not starting Gabe Davis this week.
There you go.
All right. Who else you got, buddy?
John, I'm going with a guy that was a start last week, and I'm benching his ass this week. And it hurts. It hurts me.
Gotta stay water, man.
Dalton Kincaid. Dalton Kincaid, unfortunately, last week was performing decent and then got hurt. Okay, he was a start for us, looked well, ended up getting 8 targets, 5 receptions, 21 yards, right? Got hurt, right? And it was pretty tough. So what happens now is that they're playing the Dallas defense. In addition, Dalton Kincaid, guys, has actually only been logging limited practices. And to make matters kind of more muddy, Dawson Knox is back. Dawson Knox has been, right, when he's played, Josh Allen's go-to guy in the check down, right? It's not actually been James Cook, especially in this offense. It's been more of that of Dawson Knox when he's played. And so for me, I don't know how this is going to shake out now, John. And so I actually own Dalton Kincaid. This is something I'm seriously staring at. I'm just like, do I risk a guy who might get me 3 points for my floor now that Dawson Knox is back versus maybe getting somebody on the waiver that we'll talk about here in a second? So for me, it's purely matchup based, and it's purely the fact that Dawson Knox is back, and we haven't seen Kincaid and Knox on the same field at the same time for quite some time now. So I'm going to sit Kincaid, and I'm going to wait and see how this unfolds and reevaluate for next week.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I love Dalton Kincaid, but there's a number of factors. Yes, he's hurt. He's banged up a little bit, limited practice. Dawson Knox coming back. But I will say that it really looked into film and stats from this Buffalo game because I want to see what they did differently. Josh Allen definitely checks down to Dawson Knox and to James Cook.
Yeah.
He's checking down to both of them. James Cook, he actually checked down to him a lot. In the past 2 weeks, James Cook has had 7 targets and 5 targets out of the backfield.
Great.
So that, and before that, he never had more than 4 ever the entire season. So that's what's interesting to me is that, he's finding ways to get people the ball a lot faster, get away from the pass rush, not scramble as much, not, throw across his body and potentially throw a pick. So I think the offense got a little smarter here of how to utilize him. And I do think that is going to take away some of the opportunity for Dalton Kincaid. I agree.
John, number 3, sit and quit of the week. I'm actually going to go back to that Baltimore game, and I'm going to be sitting Gus Edwards. John, again, it's what we talked about, right? They're going away from running these guys constantly. We look at what Gus Edwards has done since week 12, John. So again, going back to that Chargers week, it's been pretty bad. He's had 8 carries. He had 8 carries for 26 yards, no touchdowns. He had 1 reception for 11 yards, okay, which equates to 4 points, guys. Then against the Rams, right? And by the way, the game went into overtime. Baltimore won, but for a minute there, Baltimore was up for a hot minute. And so they still didn't even run him. And what I mean by this is he had 6 carries. 6 carries in the game for 15 yards, John. So for me, man, looking at this Jacksonville team, right, that's hungry, pissed off, Sunday night at their house, losing 2 in a row. They're not going to try to drop a third here, right? I am not willing to start Gus Edwards, especially with Keaton Mitchell taking some game time away, Justice Hill. But more than anything, we mentioned it multiple times, Lamar taking away Gus Edwards' ceiling if he's not scoring a touchdown. So for me, guys, I'm not willing to risk it. I'm benching Gus Edwards and looking elsewhere.
There's just no way in my mind, seeing what the trends have looked like over the past few weeks, that you can start any of the Baltimore running backs. You may have to because maybe you had Josh Jacobs or Jonathan Taylor and you just don't have any other options. And at least he's a guy who can score. You're just going to have to hope for somebody breaking something. But as far as opportunity, like we always say, success in fantasy football is when opportunity meets talent. And sure, the talent is there. I don't know that the opportunity is going to be. I mean, those guys, none of those guys are going to have double-digit carries. Lamar may. And then you throw in the quarterback who runs like Lamar. You've got 4-headed monster in that backfield when it comes to rushing the ball. I don't love it. I agree.
And then, John, what happens if, let's just say, shit goes weird and Jacksonville's up, right? What happens if Trevor Lawrence finds his groove? Now that's completely game scripted out of everything for Gus Edwards. So again, you're thinking about all different scenarios here, and none are really that positive for me. So that's why I'm sitting him. And John, I completely agree with you, man. John, the last one too, this is going to make you smile. And I know you're going to be happy. And it's so ridiculous. Go screw yourself, okay? Because I like white chocolate over here. I like a dude that's in the NFL, that's a little white guy running around as a receiver, right? Because let's just call it what it is. They're few and far between. It's like finding a 4-leaf clover, right? I'm going with
fucking unicorn.
Fucking unicorn. I'm going with Adam Thielen. I'm sitting his ass, John. The reason being, guys, he ended up being one of the top Cinderella stories for much of the year. Over the last 3 weeks, we have seen significant regression. Okay. So what we're looking at is he's the number 19th receiver on half PPR for the year. He's averaging still decent though, right? About 12 points a game. But over the last 3 weeks, John, week 12 at Tennessee, he had 0.7 points. Okay. He had three targets on 1 reception for 2 yards. Okay. You go then to a game at Tampa Bay to where they're in it, right? Fighting for it. He had 6 targets, 3 receptions, 25 yards, 4 points. Okay. Now they go to New Orleans. All right. Now this New Orleans game is getting interesting. He had 7 targets for 5 receptions for 74 yards, John, but it's still only equated to 8 points and a half PPR. And so, guys, what we're saying is against this Atlanta defense, this is not a great matchup. Atlanta's defense has been better than what people are giving them credit for. And on top of it, right, Atlanta is fighting for everything. They're tied with Tampa Bay and the Saints at 6 and 7. And candidly speaking, man, this team with Carolina is putrid. They're terrible. I've said it last week and I'm going to continue to say it. And this is not a reflection on Bryce Young. I want to be crystal clear. If you guys think that this is Bryce Young's fault, you're fucking out of your mind. This dude is a stud in the making. Got to give him time, in my personal opinion, right? But the problem is their offensive line is terrible. Outside of that of Adam Thielen, Jonathan Mingo is slowly coming together, but we're not seeing it at a high rate. And actually, DJ Chark is starting to eat into some of the targets as well for that of Adam Thielen. So again, not a great matchup for me this week. I'm not willing to fire up Adam Thielen. I think that you can go elsewhere and look elsewhere. So I'm sitting him this week.
I don't have any comments. I don't want to be ageist. I don't want to take a victory lap. Hey, you got a 33-year-old receiver and it's week 15. There's very few of those guys I'm starting. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Love it. John, we're going to go. Let's talk about some streams, man. What do you think? Some streams for your playoff, right? Let's dive in a bit.
Yeah. Let's look at some streams, man. I mean, everybody's looking for streaming quarterbacks right now, obviously. So who's the slam? This guy, listen, this is a slam dunk for a streaming quarterback, right?
Slam dunk. John, we are talking Matthew Pierce Stafford. I don't think that's his middle name, but it sounded good for a second.
Those of you who are new to the podcast, Frankie does like to make up middle names for guys. I'm not sure why or where that came from. I think it's cute and endearing, but
that's right.
Yeah.
Saquon Jamal Barkley. That's definitely his middle name. It has to be. And if not, we need to figure that out. But Matthew Pierce Stafford over here, guys, has been nothing short of incredible over the last 3 weeks. John, actually, he's been incredible. Yeah. The last 3 weeks, pretty much coming out of bye week, 32 points against Arizona, 30 points against Cleveland. And we told him that, you might want to start him next week or this past week as well against Baltimore. It was the right decision. He put up 28 fantasy points. Okay. So for this week against that of Washington, right, there's a method to the madness. We told you to start up Cooper Kupp. We really like Kyron Williams. What this is telling me, man, is Washington's defense sucks. And therefore, Matthew Stafford has an opportunity to continue putting up 20-plus point weeks. So for me, I don't see anything changing. I will tell you what, I am targeting Matthew Stafford if I can get him, and I'm firing him up over the likes of a Justin Fields. I'm firing him up over the likes of even the flip side of the coin here being Matthew Howell or Sam Howell, right? And many others, John. You can even make a potential argument to fire Matthew Stafford up against the red hot Jake Browning, right? And what Jake Browning has done has been nothing short of literally best in NFL history, as we mentioned on the previous episode, in completion percentage over his first 3 weeks starting. So I like Matthew Stafford that much. If you can get him, at least hold on to him, because if not this week, John, looking ahead into the semis, they have New Orleans Saints and then the Giants. Like all of it, try to get your hands on Stafford.
Hey, listen, Stafford was on the cover of our Wednesday episode. And let me tell you something, guys. Here's a little inside scoop here. If you see a player on the cover of our episode, I'm telling you right now, they almost always hit.
Yep.
So just keep that in mind. All right. Hey, you know what? I want to throw out an honorable mention.
I like
QB stream. Speaking of, cover of our episodes. We had Matthew Stafford, and then we had Joe Flacco on the Wednesday episode. Yes. Flacco is a viable starting streaming option this week. Yeah, absolutely is. With Njoku, with Amari Cooper, he loves Elijah Moore, bringing him back from the dead here. And with, I think, is going to be a strong, and what you've predicted to be a strong running game with Jerome Ford, I think it just leaves a lot of options open for Joe Flacco.
Love it, John. John, talking about some tight ends here, I'll tell you what, man, I'm actually thinking about 2 for a stream. So again, if you have Dalton Kincaid and you're kind of on the fence here, like what I am, guys, these are actually 2 dudes that I'm planning on targeting at like live. So those in the leagues, go fuck yourself, right? Now I told you who I'm going after. I get it. Okay, whatever, right? I'm going after Chig Okonkwo from that of the Tennessee Titans, right, who are playing against Houston, right? And the reason why I like him, John, is because very consistent high floor for a tight end. Last 3 weeks, 6.5 points, 8 points, and 7.1 points. What he's done is he's had 5 targets, 6 targets, and 6 targets. What this is equating to is Will Levis. Will Levis letting it fly, throwing the ball much further down the field and actually targeting more outside of that of just D-Hop comparatively to Ryan Tannehill. So really like Chig. And the other guy, John, is that of Tyler Conklin, right? And the reason why he is interesting is because, again, Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson, when at the helm, has provided a huge lift to Tyler Conklin over Tim Boyle, right? And so what he's had with Zach Wilson, right? Let's just say the last 2 weeks, or excuse me, this past week against that of Houston, he had 6 targets, 4 receptions for 57 yards. He was averaging 14.25 yards a catch. For a tight end, man, I love that. And they're playing Miami. So what is that telling you? Number 1, Miami needs to win this game after dropping it. This is also a divisional game. Number 2 is that Miami more than likely is going to run the score up, which means Zach Wilson is going to be focusing on Garrett Wilson, as well as Tyler Conklin. And now when you start thinking about, okay, from an NFL perspective, well, who's going to be potentially guarding that of Garrett Wilson? Jalen Ramsey. And so for me, man, I get it. Garrett Wilson's going to get his targets. We talked about it last episode. But for me, I like Tyler Conklin as a sneaky little high floor play. I'm not saying he's going to explode for 10 plus points. I'm saying he's probably going to be right around 5 to 9. And if you're looking for a stream, that's pretty solid. So maybe look at Tyler Conklin.
I've got an honorable mention for tight end streamers, just because I know if you're streaming tight end like I am in a league or two, it's just brutal. It's ugly. And you'll take any amount of information at all to get you to make a decision here. Logan Thomas, I think, is a very sneaky play as well. He's had a rough couple of weeks here, but, you know, against the Rams defense, 29th against tight end. We know that Logan Thomas can get it done. And Sam Howell's going to be tossing the ball around the yard for sure, because we know Kyron Williams is going to be the number 1 running back this week, running all over their asses. So I don't think you could go worse than Logan Thomas on the streaming.
I like that. I totally like that, John. And you know what? Thinking about, guys, wrapping this up here, a couple defenses that you might be looking to target. Number 1, John, Cincinnati Bengals, right? And they're playing that of Minnesota Vikings. This is purely just hey, is Nick Mullins going to be coming out, firing on all cylinders or not, right? And so I'm probably going to bet, we talked a little bit about him. We've seen that he can play, but coming out cold against a red hot Cincinnati team, I'm leaning more towards that of the Cincinnati defense. And then, John, my smash defensive player or defensive team of the week is going to be the Titans versus that of Houston. We've talked about the injuries. If CJ Stroud is not playing, Nico Collins is not playing, Tank Dell is not playing, right? They're going to be relying on that of Devin Singletary and maybe a Dameon Pierce kind of 1-2 combo. I'm not about it, especially with that Titans defense. I like Titans versus that of Houston this week.
Love it, man. Those are really, really good options. And those are good options because everyone's waivers have already run. This is an opportunity for you to look at your team.
Great call.
Pick it up on a Sunday when you don't have to do the waiver process and you can just grab a few guys. Hey, a couple of other things to think about here too, guys, is look at the weather. Now, I don't want the weather to freak you out when it comes to starts and sits necessarily. If it's raining, rain's not an issue. Where rain is an issue is if the wind is blowing. Anything over a 15-mile-an-hour wind, there's a lot of statistics about this. It definitely affects the passing games for these teams. So just take a look at that. Specifically, it may not help you make a decision with a start-sit necessarily, but certainly your kickers. I can't even believe I'm talking about kickers, but look at your kicker. Maybe you don't change it because you're like, he's fine. All the kickers are the same. Don't pick a kicker that's going to be in weather, guys. Try to get somebody indoors this time of year if you possibly can. So, my PSA for the day.
Love it, John.
All right, that's our episode, guys. Your starts and sits for your first week in the playoffs. Good luck to you all. All right, I'm gonna go back and listen to this episode too, Frank, because I brought a few things up specifically for me and just wanted to get your take. I didn't tell you about it, so I appreciate your advice on that. Yeah. Thank you for listening, everyone. Please follow us on social media: Instagram, Frankly Fantasy Football; X, Frankly Fantasy F; and on YouTube, please subscribe, share, comment, like it. All of that helps us out. You guys have all done wonderfully for us, and we're so thankful for you. Frankie, what do we got coming up next week?
Guys, ready? We're going to be honing in on the semifinals leading into the finals coming up next week's episode. As for this Saturday, do not forget there are games on Saturday and there are games on Sunday, right? So guys, pay attention to the injury reports, pay attention to those that are playing on Saturday. And just a piece of advice, John, you say this all the time, I just want to repeat it, is that if you are planning on starting a person that is playing on Saturday, do not put them in the flex spot at this point in time. Put them in a normal spot. That way, in case somebody gets hurt in practices or something like that coming in Sunday, or even through walkthroughs on Sunday, you now have way broader of options to plug and play in your flex. Just as a reminder, but go pick some ass. We're rooting for you guys.
Good luck to you in the playoffs, baby. May the fantasy gods smile upon you. Bye.